The screeching of tires echoed through the empty parking garage as I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding against my ribs. Something massive had darted across my headlights, something impossible. I sat frozen, knuckles white on the steering wheel, listening to the silence that followed. Atlanta's skyline glittered through the concrete pillars, oblivious to what lurked in the shadows. The digital clock on my dashboard read 11:43 p.m. My name is Henry Mitchell, but none of that matters now. What matters is that I survived the night. It started as a normal Tuesday evening. I'd worked late at the software company downtown and was heading home when I decided to take a shortcut through Piedmont Park. That's when everything changed. I first heard it while walking to my car, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate the air itself. Not quite a growl, not quite human. I quickened my pace, fumbling with my keys, telling myself it was just some homeless person or maybe a stray dog. The streetlights flickered as I reached my sedan, casting twisted shadows across the asphalt. Then I saw it, just a glimpse. Something moving on all fours but larger than any dog I'd ever seen, slipping between the trees. Its movements were fluid, yet wrong somehow, as if its joints bent in directions they shouldn't. I got into my car and drove faster than I should have through the empty streets. That's when I noticed headlights behind me, keeping pace, never falling back despite my increasing speed. I took random turns trying to lose them, ending up in this deserted parking structure. Now sitting in my idling car, I realized my mistake. I'd cornered myself. A scraping sound, claws on concrete, came from somewhere to my left. I killed the headlights and engine, plunging everything into darkness. My phone screen illuminated my face as I tried calling 911, but there was no signal. Of course, the sound came again, closer this time. Something was circling my car. I held my breath, eyes straining in the darkness. The parking garage's emergency lights cast faint pools of sickly yellow light every 50 feet or so, not nearly enough to see by. Between those pools of light lay absolute darkness. A low growl resonated through the structure, seeming to come from everywhere at once. Then silence. 1 minute passed. 2. I began to think I'd imagined it all. Stress from work, lack of sleep, an overactive imagination. I reached for the ignition, and that's when it slammed into the driver's side window. The glass held, but just barely, a web of cracks spreading across its surface. I caught a glimpse of gleaming yellow eyes, a snout filled with teeth, and massive shoulders covered in dark fur before it disappeared again into the shadows. With shaking hands, I turned the key, the engine roaring to life. I slammed into reverse, tires squealing as I backed away from where the creature had been. My headlights revealed nothing but empty concrete. I spun the wheel, pointing toward the exit ramp, when it appeared again, blocking my path. Standing upright on 2 legs, it towered at least 7 feet tall. Its body was a nightmarish blend of human and wolf, powerful haunches, elongated arms ending in curved claws, and a head that was unmistakably lupine, but with eyes that held a terrible intelligence. It wasn't just an animal. It understood what I was doing. It was anticipating me. I froze, unable to process what I was seeing. Werewolves weren't real. They couldn't be. Yet there it stood, chest heaving with each breath, eyes locked on mine. It smiled. Dear God, it smiled. In a blur of movement, it charged. I slammed the car into drive and veered hard to the right, missing the creature by inches. My tires squealed as I accelerated toward a different exit ramp. In my rearview mirror, I saw it drop to all fours and give chase with impossible speed. I burst out of the parking structure onto Peachtree Street, running a red light and swerving around the few cars still out at this hour. The streets of downtown Atlanta had never looked so deserted. Where were the usual crowds, the late-night partiers, the police? I checked my mirror again. Nothing was following me. Had I lost it? My phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly drove onto the sidewalk. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Running only makes the hunt more exciting, Henry, a voice whispered. It was deep, raspy, barely human. Who is this? How do you know my name? My voice sounded strange, even to myself. A chuckle came from the other end. I've been watching you for weeks. You have a routine. So predictable. So, boring, but tonight you're finally interesting. What do you want from me? To play, the voice said simply. To hunt, to feed. The call ended. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat as if it had burned me. This couldn't be happening. I needed help, needed somewhere safe. The police station. I could go to the police station. I turned the car toward Zone 5 headquarters, pushing well above the speed limit. The streets were eerily empty now, as if the city itself had decided to abandon me to whatever was happening. As I approached the police station, my headlights illuminated a scene that made my blood run cold. The front entrance was dark. The usual patrol cars were missing. A sign on the door read, "Temporarily closed due to renovation. Please visit Zone 2 headquarters." This wasn't right. Police stations don't close. I pulled over anyway, desperate for any kind of safety. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the glass. The interior was dark, chairs overturned, papers scattered across the floor. It looked like the place had been abandoned in a hurry. Or worse, something moved in the shadows inside. I backed away from the door, nearly tripping over myself in my haste to return to my car. My phone rang again. Same unknown number. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate that move, Henry? I told you. I've been watching you. I know how you think." "What have you done to the police station?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing permanent. Just ensured we wouldn't be interrupted. This is between you and me." "Why me?" "I don't even know you." Another chuckle. "You were chosen. Consider yourself special." "Chosen for what?" "To die, Henry, but not quickly, not easily." The line went dead again. I started my car with trembling hands. I needed to get out of Atlanta. I'd drive to my parents' house in Savannah if I had to. I just needed to escape this nightmare. I headed for the interstate, pushing my sedan as fast as it would go. The downtown skyline receded in my rearview mirror, and for a moment, I allowed myself to hope. That hope died as I approached the I-20 entrance ramp. A massive pileup blocked the way. At least a dozen cars crumpled together, some overturned. There were no emergency lights, no police, no ambulances. Just twisted metal gleaming in my headlights. I slowed to a stop, staring in disbelief. This wasn't possible. An accident this size would have emergency services swarming all over it. Something was very wrong. I tried the I-75 entrance next with the same result. Another pileup, another blocked path. I was being herded, kept within the city limits. My phone rang a third time. "Stop trying to leave, Henry. The game is here, in Atlanta, your city, my hunting ground." "You caused those accidents," I whispered, horror washing over me. "Those people were necessary sacrifices. Don't worry, they didn't suffer much. You're insane." "No, Henry, I'm hungry and you're still running." I hung up this time, throwing the phone down again. I needed to think. If I couldn't leave the city, I needed somewhere safe within it. Somewhere with people, with witnesses. Midtown. The clubs would still be open. There would be crowds, bouncers, security cameras. Surely even this monster wouldn't attack in front of hundreds of witnesses. I drove toward Peachtree Street's club district, where even on a Tuesday night, there should be life and light and safety in numbers. But as I approached, I realized something was wrong here too. The clubs were dark, the streets empty. A flyer tumbled across the road in front of my car. I caught a glimpse of the text. "Citywide power outage expected tonight for maintenance. All businesses advised to close early." This was coordinated, planned. How could one creature arrange all this? Unless it wasn't alone. The thought sent ice through my veins. What if there were more of them? A pack? I needed weapons, protection. I turned toward a 24-hour grocery store I knew had a sporting goods section. They sold hunting knives, maybe even firearms. The parking lot was empty when I arrived, but lights shone inside. My first piece of luck all night. I parked near the entrance and rushed inside, the automatic doors sliding open with their familiar hiss. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed through the empty store. No response. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I made my way toward the sporting goods section. Every aisle I passed was empty, not of products, but of people. No late-night employees stocking shelves, No security guards, no other customers. I found the glass case where they kept the hunting knives and more expensive gear. It was locked. Of course it was locked. Need some help with that? I spun around. A store employee stood a few feet away, smiling pleasantly. He wore the standard green vest with a name tag that read, Michael. Yes, I said, relief flooding through me. I stopped. Something was off about his smile. It was too wide, showing too many teeth. What do you need, Henry? He asked, taking a step closer. I backed away. How do you know my name? His smile widened impossibly further. We've been expecting you. I ran. Behind me I heard laughter, followed by the sound of clothing tearing and bones cracking and reshaping. I burst out of the store into the parking lot, sprinting for my car. I could hear something on all fours galloping behind me, gaining with each bound. I reached my car, fumbling with the keys. The creature, Michael or whatever he really was only seconds behind me. The key slid into the lock. I wrenched the door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut just as claws raked across the window. I jammed the key into the ignition and the engine roared to life. As I reversed out of the parking space, my headlights swept across the front of the store. 3 more figures stood there watching. As one, they began to change, their bodies contorting as fur sprouted from their skin. A pack. I was right. I floored the accelerator, tires squealing as I fled the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw 4 wolf-like creatures loping after my car, moving with unnatural speed. My mind raced. Where could I go? Who could help me? The city had been carefully emptied of potential witnesses and assistants. This had been planned for who knows how long. My apartment was out of the question. If they knew my routine, they knew where I lived. Friends would only end up as more victims. Then it hit me, the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. It never closed. Even at midnight, there would be people there. Security, federal agents. It was my best chance. I pointed my car south and drove like hell itself was chasing me. And maybe it was. The normally busy streets remained deserted, making my flight through the city eerily easy. Too easy. Why weren't they blocking this escape route as they had the interstates? My answer came as I approached the airport exit. Blue and red lights flashed ahead, a police roadblock. Under normal circumstances, this would have been reassuring. Tonight it filled me with dread. I slowed as an officer approached my window, his face obscured by the brim of his hat and the glare of emergency lights. I rolled down my window just a crack. "What's going on, officer?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Airport's closed, sir. Gas leak. Very dangerous. You'll need to turn around." "The airport doesn't close. It never closes." "Can I see some ID, please?" I asked. The officer stiffened. He leaned down, bringing his face level with my window. In the harsh flash of the cruiser lights, I saw his eyes reflect yellow, like an animal's. I didn't wait for what would happen next. I slammed the accelerator to the floor, swerving around the police cruiser. Gunshots rang out behind me, and my rear window exploded into thousands of glass fragments. I kept driving, entering the airport complex through an emergency service road. The terminals loomed ahead, their lights a beacon of hope. But as I got closer, that hope withered. The massive parking structures were nearly empty. The departure lanes, normally busy even at midnight, stood vacant. The airport wasn't closed, it had been emptied. Still, there had to be someone inside. Security staff, maintenance workers, anyone. I abandoned my car at the departures curb and ran into the terminal. The cavernous space echoed with my footsteps. Check-in counters stood unmanned. Security checkpoints were abandoned, their equipment still humming but unattended. "Hello?" I shouted, my voice bouncing off the high ceilings. "Is anyone here?" Movement caught my eye, a janitor pushing a cleaning cart near one of the gates. I ran toward him, relief washing over me. "Please, you have to help me," I gasped as I reached him. "There are these creatures. They're after me. They've done something to the city." The janitor turned slowly to face me. His expression was blank, eyes unfocused. "They told us to leave," he said in a monotone voice. "All of us. Maintenance emergency. But I forgot my medication in my locker." He blinked, seeming to struggle to focus on me. You shouldn't be here. They don't want anyone here tonight." "Who? Who doesn't want anyone here?" A distant howl echoed through the terminal. The janitor's eyes widened in fear. "Them," he whispered. "They're coming. Hide! Hide!" He shoved his cleaning cart at me and ran, disappearing down a service corridor. The howl came again, closer this time, joined by another and another. I looked around desperately for somewhere to hide. The shops were all locked up. The airline lounges required key cards. I sprinted toward the gates, hoping to find an unlocked jet bridge. The first gate I tried was locked, the second as well. At the third, the door to the jet bridge swung open. I dashed through, pulling it closed behind me. The jet bridge was dark, its accordion-like walls creating strange shadows. At the end, instead of opening onto an airplane, it ended in another door, probably leading out onto the tarmac. I moved as quietly as I could toward this door, hoping it would lead me somewhere, anywhere else. The sound of my breathing seemed too loud in the confined space. Behind me, the gate door crashed open. Claws clicked on the hard floor of the jet bridge. "I can smell your fear, Henry," a raspy voice called. "It's intoxicating." I reached the door at the end of the jet bridge and pushed through onto the tarmac. The vast expanse of concrete stretched out before me, dotted with parked aircraft. The night air was cool on my face after the stuffy interior of the terminal. Where could I go now? The aircraft were all locked. The other terminals were likely as empty as the one I'd just fled. The perimeter fence was at least half a mile away across open ground. I sprinted toward the nearest airplane, an enormous passenger jet sitting dark and silent. Perhaps I could hide beneath it, use it for cover while I figured out my next move. I had just reached the massive landing gear when growls erupted from multiple directions. I froze, looking around wildly. They emerged from the shadows between the planes. 5 of them now, moving on all fours but with that same terrible intelligence in their eyes. They had me surrounded. The largest of them, a monstrous beast with black fur streaked with gray, rose onto its hind legs. Its transformation was fluid, bones and muscles shifting until it stood in a form that was more man than wolf, though still covered in fur, still sporting that elongated snout filled with teeth. "End of the line, Henry," it said in that same raspy voice from the phone. "You've provided an excellent chase, better than most." "What are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "You know what we are," the creature replied. "Your kind has told stories about us for centuries. Some of those stories are even true." "Werewolves don't exist," I said, though the evidence before me argued otherwise. The creature laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "And yet, here we are. Why me? Why are you doing this?" "Because we can," another of the creatures growled, this one smaller with reddish fur. "Because the hunt sustains us." "But mostly," the leader said, "because you were watching us. That night in Piedmont Park, 3 weeks ago. You saw what happened to that homeless man." Memory flashed through my mind, walking through the park late one night, a shortcut I rarely took. Hearing strange sounds, glimpsing movement in the trees, seeing what I thought was a large dog attacking someone. I'd called 911 but hadn't waited around. "I didn't see anything clearly," I protested. "I wouldn't have known it was you." "Perhaps not," the leader conceded, "but we couldn't take that chance. And once we started watching you, well, you seem like you'd give us a good hunt." "We do so love a challenge." The circle tightened around me. I backed up against the landing gear, cold metal pressing against my back. "Please," I begged. "I won't tell anyone. I'll leave Atlanta. You'll never see me again." The leader tilted its head. "You misunderstand, Henry. This was never about silencing you. This was about the hunt itself, the chase, the fear." It inhaled deeply. "Your fear is particularly sweet." Another of the creatures whined impatiently. The leader nodded. "Time to end this, I think. Any last words, Henry Mitchell?" My mind raced. There had to be something, some way out. My eyes darted around, seeking anything that might help. That's when I saw it. An airport service vehicle, keys still in the ignition, parked about 30 feet away. One of the creatures stood between me and it, but if I could somehow get past... "Actually, yes," I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "I do have some last words." The leader looked amused. And what might those be? I reached into my pocket slowly, feeling the cool metal of my car keys. I'd read once that predators are attracted to movement, to things that run. Perhaps the opposite was also true. Catch, I said, and hurled my keys as hard as I could over the creatures' heads in the opposite direction from the service vehicle. The metallic jingle of the keys caught their attention. Several heads turned instinctively toward the sound. It wasn't much of a distraction, but it was all I had. I lunged forward, ducking under the swipe of the nearest werewolf and sprinting toward the service vehicle. Claws raked across my back, tearing through my shirt and into flesh. Pain blazed along my spine, but adrenaline kept me moving. I reached the vehicle, a small baggage tractor, and threw myself into the driver's seat. The keys were there, as I'd hoped. The engine started with a roar that seemed painfully loud in the night air. The werewolves recovered quickly from their momentary distraction, charging toward me with supernatural speed. I slammed the tractor into gear and floored the accelerator. The vehicle lurched forward just as the leader leaped toward me. Its claws caught the edge of the open cab, and for a terrifying moment, it hung on, snarling face inches from mine. I swerved hard, smashing the tractor into a luggage cart. The impact tore the creature loose, sending it tumbling across the tarmac. I didn't look back, pushing the little tractor to its top speed, which unfortunately wasn't very fast. The werewolves loped alongside, easily keeping pace. One jumped onto the back of the vehicle, claws digging into the metal. Ahead, I saw the bright lights of the control tower. If anyone would still be at their post, it would be air traffic controllers. It was my only hope. I aimed the tractor toward the base of the tower, the engine whining in protest at the continued abuse. The creature on the back was trying to climb into the cab. I swerved wildly, making it harder for it to maintain its grip. Another werewolf appeared on my left, running alongside. It snapped at me, teeth barely missing my arm. I yanked the wheel right, then left, trying to shake off my pursuers. The base of the control tower loomed ahead. I could see a security door, card reader glowing green beside it. Someone was still inside. I was less than 50 yards away when the tractor's engine made a horrible grinding noise and died. The vehicle coasted to a stop despite my frantic attempts to restart it. The werewolves circled, taking their time now. They knew I had nowhere left to run. A valiant effort, the leader said, approaching slowly. Blood matted the fur on its shoulder where I'd managed to injure it with the luggage cart. But futile. I looked toward the tower door, so close yet impossibly far with the creatures between me and it. The leader followed my gaze. No one will help you, Henry. Those still in the tower have been warned not to interfere. They value their lives too much. I noticed something then. A fuel truck parked near the tower. Its massive tank was marked with hazard symbols. Flammable. Another memory surfaced, a silver Zippo lighter in my pocket, a gift from my grandfather that I carried but rarely used since I didn't smoke. It was a desperate plan, probably suicidal, but it was the only one I had. You know what I don't understand? I said, slowly reaching into my pocket. Why go to all this trouble? The elaborate setup, emptying the city, the chase. Why not just kill me in the park that night? I told you, the leader replied. We enjoy the hunt. No, I said, my fingers closing around the lighter. I think there's more to it. I think you need something from your victims. Something you can only get by terrorizing them first. The creature's eyes narrowed. Perceptive. Fear seasons the meat, you might say. Makes the blood sweeter. That was all the confirmation I needed. These things were real, and they had been preying on Atlanta for who knew how long. I didn't want to die. But if I was going down, I'd take these monsters with me. In one fluid motion, I pulled out the lighter, flicked it open, and sparked a flame. What are you doing? The leader growled, suddenly wary. I nodded toward the fuel truck. Ending the hunt. Understanding dawned in those inhuman eyes. The leader barked an order to the others, and they began to back away. But it was too late. I hurled the lit lighter toward the fuel truck with all my strength. Time seemed to slow as it arced through the air, the small flame gleaming in the darkness. The explosion was deafening. A ball of fire erupted into the night sky as the fuel tank ruptured. The shock wave knocked me flat on my back, heat washing over me in a suffocating wave. Howls of pain and rage filled the air. Through the dancing flames, I saw dark shapes scattering, some engulfed in fire themselves. My back was in agony where the werewolf's claws had cut me. My ears rang from the explosion, but I was alive, and the way to the tower was clear. I staggered to my feet and ran, legs shaking, lungs burning from the smoke. I reached the security door and pounded on it with what little strength I had left. "Help! Please! Let me in!" The door remained closed. Through its small window, I could see a frightened face peering out at me. Then another. Airport staff, huddled inside, too terrified to open the door. "Please!" I begged. "They're going to kill me!" A howl cut through the night, filled with rage closer than it should have been. I looked back. Through the flames and smoke, I saw the leader. Its fur was singed, flesh burned in places, but it was very much alive, and it was coming for me. I redoubled my efforts, hammering on the door. "For God's sake, help me!" The lock clicked. The door opened just enough for hands to grab me and pull me inside. It slammed shut behind me, locks engaging. I collapsed onto the floor of a small security office. 3 people stared down at me, 2 men and a woman in airport staff uniforms, their faces pale with fear. "Thank you," I gasped. "Thank you." "What the hell are those things?" one of the men asked, peering through the window at the chaos outside. "Werewolves," I said, the words still sounding ridiculous despite everything I'd seen. "They've done something to the city, cleared it out somehow." "We know," the woman said. "We got orders to evacuate the airport. Gas leak, they said. Most people left. We stayed because, well, it didn't sound right." "Smart decision," I said, trying to sit up. Pain lanced through my back. "They're hunting me, and they'll kill you too if they get in here." "They can't get in," the other man said, though he didn't sound convinced. "This door is reinforced. Security protocol." As if in answer, something slammed against the door, making us all jump. The metal bulged inward from the impact. "Jesus," the first man whispered. Another impact. The hinges creaked ominously. "Is there another way out of here?" I asked, forcing myself to my feet despite the pain. The woman nodded. "Through the tower. We can take the stairs up, then there's a service elevator that goes to another building." Another crash against the door. The frame splintered. "We need to go. Now," I urged. We fled through an inner door into a stairwell, beginning the climb up the control tower. Behind us, the security door finally gave way with a screech of tearing metal. Growls and the click of claws on tile followed. "Hurry!" I shouted, though my own pace was hampered by my injuries. We climbed as fast as we could, the sounds of pursuit growing louder below us. The stairwell seemed endless, each step sending fresh waves of pain through my lacerated back. Finally, we reached a door marked "Control Room." The woman pushed it open, and we spilled into the brightly lit space at the top of the tower. 2 air traffic controllers looked up in shock from their stations. Through the panoramic windows, the burning remains of the fuel truck cast an orange glow across the tarmac. "Lock the door!" I gasped. One of the men with me slammed it shut, turning the deadbolt just as something heavy crashed against it from the other side. "What the hell is going on?" one of the controllers demanded. "No time to explain," I said. "Where's the service elevator?" The controller pointed to a door on the far side of the room. "Through there, but..." Another impact shook the stairwell door. Wood splintered around the hinges. "Everyone, go!" "Now," I ordered, moving toward the indicated door. The others followed, including the controllers, who seemed to finally understand the gravity of the situation. The service elevator was small, meant for maintenance personnel. We crowded in, and the woman jabbed the button for the ground floor. "It leads to the utility building," she explained as the elevator began its descent. "From there, we can reach the parking structure." I nodded, trying to think past the pain and exhaustion. "Does anyone have a phone that works?" "Mine's gone." One of the controllers produced a smartphone. "Coverage has been spotty all night, but it's worth a try." I took the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. To my surprise, it connected. "911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice was blessedly normal, reassuringly professional. "My name is Henry Mitchell," I said. "I'm at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. There's been an attack, multiple attackers. They've killed people. We need help immediately. Sir, can you describe the attackers? How could I possibly explain? Armed men, I said after a pause. Very dangerous. They've taken over the airport. Please send everyone you can. Help is on the way, sir. Stay on the line with me. The elevator reached the ground floor and the doors opened onto a dim utility corridor. We moved quickly, following emergency exit signs toward what I hoped was safety. Where are we going? I asked the woman, who seemed to know the layout. Employee parking, she replied. We can take my car, get away from here. We burst through a door into the cool night air. A small parking lot lay before us, surrounded by chain-link fence. Beyond it, I could see the main terminal in the distance, smoke still rising from where the fuel truck had exploded. There, the woman said, pointing to a blue sedan. That's mine. We were halfway across the lot when howls erupted from multiple directions. Dark shapes detached from the shadows, moving to encircle us. Run! I shouted. Get to the car! We sprinted for the vehicle. The woman fumbled with her keys, unlocking it remotely. The doors unlocked with a cheerful chirp that seemed obscenely out of place in our nightmare. One of the controllers screamed as a werewolf tackled him from behind, jaws closing around his neck. Blood sprayed across the asphalt. Get in! I yelled to the others, yanking open the passenger door. Now! The remaining controller and one of the airport staff dove into the back seat. The woman reached the driver's door and practically fell inside. I was about to follow when claws gripped my ankle, yanking me backward. I crashed to the ground, the breath knocked from my lungs. The leader loomed over me, more man than wolf now, but still unmistakably monstrous. Burns covered one side of its body, the fur scorched away to reveal blistered skin beneath. You've caused me considerable pain, Henry, it growled. I'm going to take my time with you. The car engine started behind me. Go! I shouted to the others. Get out of here! But, the woman began. Go! I repeated. Get help! The car's tires squealed as it reversed, then accelerated toward the parking lot exit. Several werewolves gave chase, but the vehicle was faster, disappearing into the night. The leader watched it go, then turned its attention back to me. Heroic, it sneered, but futile. By the time help arrives, there will be nothing left of you to find. It reached down, claws curling around my throat, lifting me off the ground as if I weighed nothing. I struggled, kicking ineffectually at its massive form. Your fear has a different quality now, it observed, inhaling deeply. Resignation, acceptance, still sweet, but less vibrant. My vision began to darken as its grip tightened. This was it. After everything, this was how I would die. Suddenly, the night was split by blinding light. A thunderous, mechanical roar filled the air. The werewolf's head snapped up, looking toward the source. A helicopter appeared over the parking lot, its searchlight pinning us in its glare. The voice of a police officer boomed through a loudspeaker. This is the Atlanta Police Department. Release the hostage and put your hands where we can see them. The leader snarled, its grip on my throat loosening slightly. I sucked in a desperate breath. More lights appeared. Police cruisers, their sirens wailing, speeding toward the airport from multiple directions. Your game is over, I managed to croak. The creature's eyes blazed with fury. This changes nothing, it growled. You think your human authorities can stop us? We've existed in the shadows for centuries. The helicopter hovered lower, its rotor wash creating a small hurricane in the parking lot. The leader's grip tightened again, and it began dragging me toward the darkened utility building. Stop and release the hostage, the loudspeaker commanded again. The searchlight followed our movement. A sharp crack split the air, a sniper shot from the helicopter. The bullet struck the werewolf's shoulder, causing it to stumble but not fall. It roared in pain and rage, a sound no human throat could produce. More police cars screeched into the airport complex, their sirens wailing. The other werewolves scattered, melting into the shadows and fleeing the approaching authorities. Your pack is abandoning you, I gasped through the pain of its grip. The leader snarled, its face inches from mine. They'll regroup. This isn't over. But you won't live to see the sunrise. Its claws dug deeper into my throat. I could feel warm blood trickling down my neck. My vision began to blur again. Another shot rang out, closer this time. The werewolf jerked and howled, releasing me as it clutched at its chest. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Through watering eyes, I saw a police officer advancing cautiously, pistol trained on the wounded creature. "On the ground! Hands where I can see them!" he shouted, clearly unable to process what he was actually looking at. The leader hunched over, seeming to shrink in on itself. For a moment, I thought it was surrendering. Then I realized it was changing again, its body contorting as it forced itself back into a more human-like form. Within seconds, where the monstrous half-wolf had stood, there was now what appeared to be an ordinary man, naked, wounded, but recognizably human. "Officer!" the creature called out in a perfectly normal voice, now devoid of its bestial growl. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. This man attacked me. He's delusional, dangerous." The officer hesitated, his gun still raised but uncertainty clear on his face. He couldn't have seen the transformation clearly in the chaotic lighting. "Don't listen to him," I shouted, my voice raw. "He's not human. None of them are." The werewolf-turned man took a step toward the officer, hands raised in apparent surrender. "Please, I need medical attention. He's been chasing me, saying crazy things about werewolves." I struggled to my feet. "Look at my back. Look at the claw marks. He did that to me." The officer glanced between us, confusion evident. More police were approaching now, fanning out across the parking lot. The leader must have realized it was outnumbered. With unexpected speed, it lunged at the closest officer, knocking him down and sprinting toward the perimeter fence. "Stop!" Multiple officers raised their weapons. The creature reached the fence and began scaling it with inhuman agility. Gunshots rang out. At least 2 bullets found their mark. The naked figure at the top of the fence jerked and fell backward, crashing to the ground. For a moment, it lay still. Then, before the officers could reach it, it began to change again. This time, involuntarily, it seemed. Fur sprouted across its body, limbs elongated. The transformation was only partial this time, leaving it caught between forms. A grotesque hybrid that provoked gasps of horror from the approaching police. "What the hell is that thing?" one officer shouted, voicing what they all must have been thinking. The partially transformed creature made one last attempt to rise, then collapsed. Whether it was truly dead or merely incapacitated, I couldn't tell. Officers surrounded me, some stopping to provide first aid, others securing the perimeter and calling for backup. Questions came at me from all directions. My head spun with exhaustion and blood loss. "Sir, an ambulance is on the way," someone was saying. "Can you tell us what happened here?" How could I possibly explain? Who would believe me? "They're werewolves," I said simply, too tired to construct a more plausible story. "They've been hunting people in Atlanta." Skeptical glances were exchanged over my head. I didn't care. The evidence was lying on the ground 30 feet away, a biological impossibility that would force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the world. Paramedics arrived, loading me onto a stretcher. As they carried me toward the waiting ambulance, I caught snippets of radio chatter from the police. Multiple bodies found throughout the airport complex. Witnesses reporting large animal attacks. Need specialized containment for the suspect. The night sky was beginning to lighten at the horizon. Dawn was approaching. We'd been running and fighting all night, though it felt like an eternity. In the ambulance, as paramedics worked to stabilize me, one leaned close. "Did you really see what happened to that person?" she asked quietly. I nodded weakly. "Is it true? What they're saying? That it changed?" "Yes," I whispered. "There are more of them, hiding in the city." She exchanged a glance with her colleague. "Rest now," she said, injecting something into my IV line. "You're safe." Darkness claimed me. I woke in a hospital room, sunlight streaming through the windows. For a blissful moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then the pain in my back and throat brought reality crashing down. A doctor came to check on me, followed by a nurse. They spoke in reassuring tones about my condition, my treatment, my prognosis. Normal medical talk that felt surreal after what I'd experienced. "There are some people who'd like to speak with you, if you're feeling up to it," the doctor said as he finished examining my wounds. "Police?" I asked, my voice still hoarse. "Not exactly." 10 minutes later, 2 men in dark suits entered my room. They introduced themselves as Agents Carter and Webb from a Department of Homeland Security I'd never heard of. "Mr. Mitchell," Agent Carter began, "we'd like to hear your account of last night's events." I told them everything, from the first sighting in Piedmont Park to the final confrontation at the airport. They listened without interruption, taking occasional notes but offering no reaction to even the most outlandish parts of my story. When I finished, Agent Webb nodded. "Thank you for your candor. What you experienced was undoubtedly traumatic." "You believe me?" I asked, surprised. The agents exchanged glances. "Let's say we're not dismissing your account," Carter replied carefully. "The individual you encountered at the airport has been taken to a secure facility for examination." "It was still alive?" "It was when we took custody, yes. Beyond that, I'm not at liberty to say." "What about the others? The rest of the pack?" "We have teams investigating several locations throughout the city based on your information and other incidents that have been reported over the past few months." Webb leaned forward. "Mr. Mitchell, what happened to you is classified at the highest levels. You won't be speaking to local police or the media about this. As far as the public is concerned, what occurred last night was a terrorist attack that was successfully thwarted. The city evacuation was a precautionary measure that saved lives." "You're covering it up," I said, anger flaring. "People died. These things have been hunting in Atlanta for who knows how long, and you're just going to pretend it didn't happen?" "We're handling the situation," Carter said firmly, "but public knowledge of these entities would cause mass panic and interfere with our ability to contain the threat." "We have some forms for you to sign," Webb added, producing a folder. "Non-disclosure agreements primarily. In return, the government will cover all your medical expenses and provide compensation for your cooperation." "And if I refuse?" Carter's expression hardened slightly. "That would be unwise, Mr. Mitchell. Very unwise indeed." I stared at them, understanding dawning. They knew. They'd known all along that these creatures existed. This wasn't their first encounter with werewolves. "How long?" I asked. "How long have your people known about them?" "That's not relevant to your situation," Webb replied smoothly. "What is relevant is your recovery and your future. Sign the forms, Mr. Mitchell. Return to your life. Put this behind you." What choice did I have? I signed. 3 months later, I left Atlanta. My wounds had healed, leaving jagged scars down my back that the doctors said would never fully fade. The government's compensation had been generous enough to allow me to relocate without financial strain. I chose a small town in Idaho, as far from major cities as I could reasonably go. Mountains, sunshine, clear air. No shadowy alleyways, no overgrown parks, no dark parking garages. For a while, I thought I might be able to put it all behind me, just as Agent Webb had suggested. I got a remote job in software development. I made a few casual acquaintances. I tried to establish a normal routine, but the nightmares never stopped. In them, I was always running, always being hunted. Sometimes I was in Atlanta, sometimes in places I'd never been. Always there were yellow eyes watching from the darkness. Always there was the sound of claws on concrete. Worse than the nightmares was the knowledge, the certainty that they were still out there. Perhaps the government had captured or killed the pack that had hunted me, but there had to be others. How many cities had their own packs? How many disappearances, attributed to human killers or misadventure, were actually the work of monsters that most people believed existed only in fiction? I became obsessive about security. Multiple locks on my doors and windows, security cameras, motion sensor lights. I never went out after dark. 1 month ago, as I was shopping for groceries in the small local supermarket, I noticed a new employee stocking shelves. There was nothing overtly suspicious about him. He was ordinary in every way, except for how he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. The intensity of his gaze, the slight tilt of his head, almost like an animal catching a scent. I abandoned my shopping cart and left immediately. That night, I packed a bag and drove to another town, checking into a motel under a false name. The next day, I cut my hair, bought colored contact lenses to change my eye color, and began growing a beard. Small disguises, probably ineffective, but they gave me some sense of control. I've been moving ever since, Never staying more than a few days in any one place, using cash only, avoiding cameras, living like a fugitive, because that's what I am now. Not a criminal fleeing justice, but prey trying to escape its predators. I don't know if they're still hunting me specifically, or if I'm just being paranoid. Perhaps that supermarket employee was exactly what he appeared to be. Perhaps the motel clerk who sniffed the air when I checked in was suffering from allergies. Perhaps the woman at the gas station who watched me too intently was merely bored. Or perhaps they're everywhere, hidden in plain sight, waiting, hunting. The full moon is tomorrow night. I've rented a remote cabin with good locks and a generator in case the power goes out. I have supplies enough for a week. I won't go outside until the moon has waned. This is my life now. Running, hiding, surviving one night at a time. Sometimes in my darkest moments, I wonder if I should have died that night in Atlanta. It might have been cleaner, easier. But then I remember what the leader said, fear seasons the meat, and I refuse to give them the satisfaction. I will not be their prey. I will not be hunted. So I keep moving, keep watching the shadows, keep my scars as a reminder of what lurks in the darkness. Because now I know the truth that most people are blessed to never discover. Monsters are real. They walk among us, and once you've seen them, truly seen them, you can never unsee them again. If you're reading this, it's because something has happened to me. Consider this my testament, my warning. Watch the shadows, be careful who you trust. And if you ever find yourself alone on a dark night and hear the sound of claws on concrete, run. Or perhaps you'll dismiss this as the ravings of a damaged mind. Perhaps that would be easier for you. I almost envy you that luxury. As for me, the sun is setting. Night is coming, and I can hear something moving outside my cabin door.